Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reading Captain Underpants and the Big Bad Battle of the Bionic Booger Boy. Part 1. The Knights of the Nasty Nostril Nuggets. Chapter 8 to 18. Chapter 8. The comic is mightier than the spitball. George and Harold were sent straight to the detention room. Man, said Harold, Melvin is such a tattletale. Somebody ought to teach him a lesson. And we're just the guys to do it. It's, said George. Detention. So George and Harold created an all-new comic book featuring everybody's favorite tattletale meanie, Melvin Sneedly. But when they were done, the two boys sneaked out of the detention room and to run off copies of their latest work and sell them in the hallway. The new comic was great and was a great success. Everybody loved it. Well, everybody but Melvin Sneedly. I should say, as Melvin walked into his last class of the day, he noticed small groups of students in the hallway reading comics together and giggling. Normally this was enough to make Melvin run straight to the principal's room and tell on everyone for unsupervised reading, which is strictly forbidden. But today, Melvin noticed something strange. The comic reading students were pointing at him and laughing at him. What? Said Melvin. What's wrong? What are you all laughing at? Melvin looked around the hallway desperately. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was pointing over to a group of second graders. Grabbed the comic book out of their hand and looked at the cover. Melvin was furious. You guys are so immature, shrieked Melvin. He quickly darted off to read the comic in peace. But everywhere he ran, he came across more pointing and more laughing. Finally, Melvin thought of one place he could read the comic in private. He went into the boys' bathroom, locked himself in one of the stalls, sat down, and read. Splat, splat! As Melvin sat reading, his legs dripped with ketchup. He became angrier and angrier. I'm gonna get Jordan Harold, Melvin vowed. Chapter 9. Captain Underpants and the Terrifying Tale of the Tattletron 2000 by George Beard and Harold Hutchins. Captain Underpants and the Terrifying Tale of the Tattletron 2000 by George Beard and Harold Hutchins. Once upon a time, there was a dumb kid named Melvin, who was a big tattletale. I'm telling! But everywhere he went, he caused grief and misery. I'm telling! No skateboarding. Until one day, bang, crash, I'm telling! Hey, cause that guy just robbed the bank. Gee, thanks. Kid, you're under arrest. Hey kid, you solved the crime of the century. And so, daily news. The dumb kid is a hero. Everybody loves Melvin. He had become so popular that he decided to run for mayor. I'm telling! Vote for a hero. He won in a landslide victory. Congratulations. You're the youngest mayor ever. Yes, I'm going to make some big changes. Soon, Mayor Melvin made a bunch of dumb new laws. No humming, no smiling, no talking, no reading signs, no wedgies, no stinky feet, no marveling at nature, no burping, no stopping to smell the roses. And people were getting arrested left and right. You're under arrest. But I didn't do anything. Busted. No saying, but I didn't do anything. And they all got sent to jail. Ha ha. Suddenly, Mayor Melvin, all the jail are full. I built a big robo jail. I will build a big robo jail and catch those lawbreakers myself. So he built the Tattletron 2000. Soon Mayor Melvin was off catching lawbreakers. That'll teach you. Then Melvin headed for the school. Help! The Tattletron 2000 just ran across the soccer field and squished the gym teacher. Oh no, we just planted that grass. This looks like a job for Crash Captain Underpants. What's up, bub? Look out! You're going to jail for busting the roof. But Captain Underpants was faster than a speeding waistband. No zipping. More powerful than boxer shorts. No crashing through signs. Crash! And able to leap tall buildings without getting a wedgie. Captain Underpants wanted to fight the robot, but he didn't. Wanted to hurt the people inside. Then he got an idea. Mrs. Plump prune juice factory. Mrs. Plump prune juice factory. Prune juice. Crash! It makes you go poop. Hey! What the? We're free! Ugh. Soon, there was nobody left inside the Tattletron 2000 except for Melvin. I'm telling! And so, hooray for Captain Underpants! You guys are so immature. Then everybody got sent free. Tra-la-la. We're free and stuff. Yay! Yippee! Goo-goo! Ruff! The end. Treehouse Comic Inc. Chapter 10 had Mr. Melvin. Mad Mr. Melvin. Melvin was furious. He ripped the comic book in half and tossed it over his shoulders. Then he washed his hands in the toilet and stormed out of the restroom. I'm gonna get George and Harold for that, said Melvin. I'm gonna teach them a lesson they never forget. After school, Melvin grabbed his Combinotron 2000 and headed home. Melvin's mother and father were both busy working on a top-secret government experiment when Melvin walked in the front door. Hello, son, said Melvin's father. How was your day at school? Terrible, said Melvin. Nobody in school has sufficient respect for my beautiful mind. Those dull-witted, lame-brained, gum-chewing idiots are more impressed with comic books than they are with wonders of science. But I shall teach them. Ha, 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 ha. That's nice, honey, said Melvin's mom. Melvin marched up to his room to begin building a brand new superpowered robot. Saw the family's pet cat, Dandrella, sleeping quietly on his bed. Hey! Melvin screamed. What are you doing in my room, you stupid cat? You know I'm allergic to you. Now get out. Achoo! Stay out! After a few hours, Melvin had built his newest and most powerful robot ever, which had 3 sets of interchangeable laser eyeballs, Marco hydraulic jumpatronic, and an extendable octo-claw rib cage, and was powered by 3 separate twin-turbo 9000 SP5 Kung Fu titanium lithium alloy processors, which were all built into virtually indestructible flexogomonic endoskeleton that had the power to punch through cinder blocks, crush steel in its vice poorly written run on sentences. It could also slice bagels. That ought to do the trick, Melvin said, wiping his nose on a tissue. Now all I have to do is achoo! Combine my body with this bionic robot. Now I shall be the most powerful boy who achoo ever lived. Chapter 11. Melvin's Fantasy. Melvin set up the Combinatron 2000 and made the proper adjustments. He imagined what his life imagined what his life is gonna be as the world's first bionic boy. He imagined himself walking into school the next day, his arms swinging confidently as he crashed through the wall. The girls would swoon as Melvin talked for hours about the amazing world of science. Miss Rubble will probably let Melvin sit at her desk from now on, because Melvin's new buns of steel will be too massive to fit in an ordinary children's chair. Maybe Mr. Krupp would invite the governor to visit the school. So he could show off his smartest and most powerful student. If so, the governor will probably declare a new holiday, National Melvin's Needly Day. A day when kids all over the world will get extra homework and pop quizzes through the glorious name of Melvin. National Melvin's Needly. But the best part of all would be George and Harold's reaction. They would be so terrified by Melvin's incredible size and strength. They probably dropped to their knees and begged for mercy, and Melvin would spare them only if they agreed to be his slaves for eternity. They'd have to carry his books, sharpen his pencils, be his personal footstools during each class. Life is gonna be achoo! Life is gonna achoo rule, said Melvin. Chapter 12. The Night of the Nasty Nostril Nuggets. Melvin turned on his Combinatron 2000. A high-pitched tone pierced to the air, getting higher and higher in frequency as the machine charged to full power. Oops, said Melvin. He quickly turned the dramatic effects settings to off so it wouldn't disturb his parents. Silently, so the machine continued to charge as Melvin entered calculations to the laser extractor. When the laser extractor had finally warmed up, Melvin stepped in front of the Combinatron 2000 standing perfectly still beside his new robot. Suddenly, 2 streaks of red glowing light flashed onto Melvin and the robot as the Combinatron 2000 began assimilating information on the 2 elements it was about to combine. Finally, a computer-sized voice started the countdown. Combining 2 elements in 5 seconds. Combining 2 elements in 4. Melvin stood perfectly still, combining 2 elements in 4 seconds. Melvin's nose began to twitch. Combining 2 elements in 3 seconds. Suddenly, Melvin felt an uncontrollable urge. He cupped his hand over his mouth and nose as his eyes squeezed closed. Involuntarily, combining 2 elements in 2 seconds. Achoo! Melvin looked onto his hands, which were now glistening with mucus and crusty chunks of semi-dried booglets. Suddenly, the Combinotron 2000 began to recalculate the elements in its laser lights, combining 3 elements in 1 second. 3 elements! Melvin screamed in horror. What's the 3rd element? What's the 3rd element? Quickly! Melvin's eyes started around the room, searching for any new element that had accidentally made its way into the sights of laser extractor. What's the 3rd element? He screamed again. Then he looked down onto his crusty, dripping, phlegm-filled hands. Uh-oh, said Melvin as a blinding burst of white light enveloped him. Blast! Chapter 13. The next day. Melvin didn't show up for school on time. Nobody seemed to notice, though, because all the children were excited about show and tell. Almost everyone had brought in really lame stuff like books or awards, but George and Harold had something that was totally cool. Everybody remembers Sulu from yesterday, right? Said George. Well, we took him home to live with us in our treehouse, and we taught him the greatest trick, said Harold. The 2 boys carried Sulu over to the classroom window and opened it up. Harold pulled out a large watermelon out of his book bag and showed it to Sulu. Okay, Sulu, said George, showed everybody your new trick. In one swift motion, Sulu placed his mouth onto the watermelon and shoved the entire thing into his left cheek. The 4 graders were stunned. No, said Harold. That's not the trick. The trick is what happens next. Sulu looked out the window and eyed a dead tree at the far end of the empty playground. Sulu began to chew up the watermelon, then pukered his tiny hamster lips and spitted. The watermelon seeds fired out of Sulu's mouth, hitting their target with expert precision in no time at all. The dead tree at the end of the playground was reduced to a pile of twigs and sawdust. The class cheered as George and Harold petted their amazing little bionic buddy. George and Harold didn't think that anybody would beat their show and tell display, but they were wrong, because at that very moment, Melvin Sneedley was dripping down the hall towards the classroom door. Melvin hadn't brought anything for the show and tell. Melvin was the show and tell. Chapter 14. The unnecessarily disgusting chapter. Notice the following chapter is extremely gross. To avoid nausea, projectile vomiting, or other gastronocetal unpleased entries, please refrain from eating for at least 1 hour before reading this chapter. You won't want to eat after reading it, let me assure you. All the 4 graders were cheering, and Pet Sulu from the classroom door slowly opened. A greenish, glistening behemoth entered the room, filling the air with sounds of grinding metal, gears, and wet, gooey, bursting bubbles. Some of the girls screamed. Some boys did too. You guys are so immature, said the horrible beast. At once, the children recognized the terrifying creature that stood before him. Melvin? They cried. Yes, it's me, gurgling the wet, jiggling monster angrily. His eyes and nose were dripping with warm, greenish custard like mucus. His robotic arms were caked with massive blobs of crispy, shimmering snot. As he turned to close the classroom door behind him, the part of his hand came off the doorknob. It oozed slowly down the door, leaving behind a chunky trail of moist extraction. Melvin squished at and sloshed at the jiggling over to his chair. Each gooey footstep coated the floor with a foamy trail of slime, and everything he touched became wet, encrusted with warm bubbling syrupy phlegm. When Melvin sat down, generous helpings of yellowish pudding like goo slowly dripped down the chair collecting into creamy, gelatinous puddles beneath him. The puddles themselves were slightly transparent and speckled with thick, shimmering nose hairs and dark red chunks of coagulated blood, which already, yelled George to the narrator. Enough with the descriptions! You're making us all sick. Thank you, George, said Mr. Ribble. Now, Melvin, why don't you tell us all what happened to you? Well, said Melvin, I tried to combine myself with a bionic robot last night, but I accidentally sneezed the last second, so you got combined with a robot and boogers, said George. Yeah, said Melvin, but don't worry. I'm building a Repetron 1000 which will reverse their effects and turn me into a boy again. It'll just take 6 months to finish. 6 months? Said Harold. Hey, cellular separation is a highly complex procedure, said Melvin. It's not like building a robot. It takes time. And you should try taking the batteries out of that combino thingy and putting them in backwards, suggested George. That might reverse the effect. Melvin rolled his thick, bubbling crust of infrared eyeball that gurgled the dumbest. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He gurgled. Chapter 15. The new Melvin. You might think that turning into a bionic booger boy was worse than the worst thing that could actually you think that turning into a bionic booger boy was the worst thing that could ever happen to a kid, but it wasn't at all. Believe it or not, there was actually a positive side to being lumbering loogie lad. For instance, Melvin now won every football game he played because no one wanted to tackle him. And when he served a volleyball, nobody on the other team would dare to hit the ball back. The ball back. Besides besides being the new sports star, there was other perks too. Melvin had to wait in line at the drinking fountain. Never had to wait in the at the drinking fountain anymore, because now he had his own personal drinking fountain. Because, well, you could use a drinking fountain after a bionic booger boy had globbered it all over it. Didn't think so. All of the special attention that Melvin was receiving made some other kids a little jealous. But George and Harold, considering the many evil villains that George and Harold had been battling, all year. The two boys were just grateful that Melvin had turned himself into a gigantic, terrifying beast with plans to destroy the earth. It could be a lot worse, said Harold. At least Melvin's not a terrifying evil villain. Yeah, you're right, said George. I can't think of anything that could turn Melvin into a terrifying evil villain. Chapter 16, The Cold and Flu Season. Soon it was autumn. And the new season brought it with many changes: crisp, chilly air, early morning frost, and bright, colorful leaves. But with the beauty of autumn came to another change that wasn't quite so welcome. The cold flu season all through Jerome Hortwiz's elementary school. People were getting sick. The hallways were filled with runny noses, sneezing mouths, and aching bodies. Sniff, achoo! Sniff, sniff, sniff. Achoo! Unfortunately, one of those noses and mouths and bodies belonged to Melvin Sneedley. Every time Melvin sneezed, thousands of tiny driblets shot out of his mouth, splattering the chalkboard with a thin layer of foamy, glistening, yellowish-green Topeka like mucus. Don't forget to cover your mouth, Melvin, dear, said Miss Ribble. Oh, sorry, said Melvin. Sorry. He put his hand over his mouth and sneezed again. This time the explosion of air formed. His stifled sneeze blew off large. Now, wet globs of his body which sprayed over the entire classroom. It was as if somebody set off a giant firecracker inside a bucket of green paint. The warm, smelly goo gapped into people's hair, splattered onto their clothes, and seemed to drench every square inch of the room. Hold on. Oh, on second thought, said Melvin. Miss Ribble, don't cover your mouth, said Miss Ribble. Don't cover your mouth this time. Now, who wants a cookie? Chapter 17, The Field Trip. The next day, for some strange reason, Miss Ribble was out sick with a cold. Mr. Krupp was filling in as a substitute teacher, and as usual, he was very angry. What the heck is going on in this room? He yelled. What's with all the raincoats and umbrellas? Then Melvin sneezed. A few moments later, Mr. Krupp returned to the classroom with fresh clothes and raincoat and an umbrella. All right, everybody, he shouted. Today is the field trip. Miss Anthrop and I are taking you all to Snotty Bro's tissue factory to see how blow rags are made. The word tissue made Melvin jump. No! He cried in a panic. Me no like tissues! An eerie silence fell over the classroom. Everybody looked at Melvin in shock. Did Melvin just say me no like tissues? He asked Harold. Yeah, said George. I never heard him misuse the odd pronoun before. Who does he think he is? Frankenstein? Chapter 18. Okay guys, that's all for today. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye! This is the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Oh my god, we're literally walking to the Burj Khalifa. I am so excited, I cannot believe it. I just went to the Gucci store and I got this Gucci t-shirt for me.